Hi, this is Steve Rigolosi, and tonight on Forgotten Mysteries, I have for you The HIGHBINDERS by Oliver Bleeck. This is copyright 1973 by Morrow. And I just want to begin by saying I think this is a very handsome book. I really like the jack design. I think it's very clean and relevant to what's going on in the pages. And I even like the way the book itself looks. It's got this, nice yellow binding, just really a nice book to hold and read. So that, the aesthetics gotten out of the way, it's interesting to point out that Oliver Bleeck was a pseudonym of the well-known American mystery writer Ross Thomas. And I had read Thomas. I read several of his books quite some time ago, and he's one of these authors who kind of falls into the category for me of someone I like, but that I don't necessarily go looking for. It's more like when I see something of his in a used bookstore that I like, that I haven't read, I usually will pick it up, but I don't go scrambling around the net looking for books by Ross Thomas. But when I bought this book, I didn't even know that this was Ross Thomas. I just thought it was kind of a neat looking and neat sounding book. And the style is such that I think I probably could have figured out that that Ross Thomas was behind, Oliver Bleeck. But, it says it in the author biography. So I wasn't left to my own devices to figure that out. So let's get started. The first thing I would like to point out is I got the book home and I thought to myself, what the hell is a highbinder? I've never heard that word. And I thought, okay, might be part of the mystery. So I didn't go look it up, and thinking it will be revealed, all will be revealed during the reading experience, what highbinders means. And it wasn't. The word appears nowhere in the book. So I had to go look it up. And so it's not a spoiler to tell you, because you may have heard of it. Highbinder, it's actually American slang for a con man, or just in general, an unscrupulous person. I don't think I've ever heard it used in conversation, and I'm going to work it into my own vocabulary so that when I say it, people look at me as if to say, what does that mean? Share with us this wonderful new word that you've learned, Steve. Because let's face it, we're surrounded by highbinders in our society, right? With the internet scams and all that other stuff. So let me just tell you a little bit about the protagonist and the story. Our protagonist is Philip St. Ives. A very English-sounding name, but he is an American. And he's actually, I come to find out, the series character in the Oliver Bleeck books. So there's several installments of St. Ives books. And he has a rather interesting job. He is a go-between. And, there are apparently very few of these people in the world, but the way to describe that job is, let's say someone has kidnapped your kid for $1 million ransom. St. Ives will take that $1 million to meet the kidnapper and do the swap of the kid for the, for the $1 million, and, bring the kid home. And then he takes a fee of 10% of however much money is being demanded or extorted. And it's not just people, it's things, things that have been stolen that, say you're a thief and you know that, I don't know, Liz Taylor really loves one of her diamonds. You break into her house, steal her diamond, and then ransom it back to her because you know that she will pay more for it than anybody else. Although I guess there's a question of insurance that doesn't really play into this book so much. So As the book gets started, St. Ives is in London, and he has been hired to to act as a go-between between the people who have stolen a precious sword, the sword of St. Louis, or Saint Louis, because he's from a French saint. And it's worth, at the time of the writing of this book, about £3 million, because it's got on the hilt on the crossbar, this enormous diamond, the shape of an egg that, is made out to be the biggest diamond ever found in the world. So it's really, almost priceless. And the guy who owns the sword, like so many people who get custody of really valuable things, finds it in, some like junk shop at some, consignment place in London somewhere, and only gradually does he realize how much it's worth, because it's also encrusted with rubies and it's gold, and it's got this history. And in this way, it reminded me of another book that I had read by Dick Francis called To the Hilt, where the Prince of Wales asks the Francis character there to help him find a sword that's gone missing. So I guess, there's more than one stolen sword book out there, if you like that particular sub genre. So in the course of trying to figure out what goes on, he meets up with our protagonist, and it's a first-person narrative. St. Ives was once posted as a journalist in London, and he wrote about the underworld. He was kind of a Barbara Walters of the underworld, in that he would get these underworld figures to sit with him and tell them about their lives, and then he would report on that and change names, and it was all very titillating. I guess he was a little bit ahead of his time in terms of interviewing bad people, because that's what readers wanted to read. So he's got a knowledge of London, and he also made friends and contacts, some of them in the underworld, while he was stationed there before he went back to the States, before he quit his job and just decided that this go-between gig was what he wanted to do to make his money. He's divorced and has an 8-year-old kid, but we never meet his wife or child. It's just kind of part of his background. So St. Ives is out to recover the sword and, make the cash swap and take his cut and then head back to the States. So that is the basic plot of the book. And I guess you would call this book, it certainly is a mystery, but it's kind of got some caper aspects to it, which I tend to really like. I like sort of these capers where, nobody knows what's going on and people are running around a city trying to figure out what end is up. And there were, for me, a lot of things to really like about this book. The first is, Thomas /Bleeck was really a good writer, very sharp, very observant. And what I particularly liked was his outsider's view of London. So he looks at it critically. Londoners usually, they love their city and they're great boosters for their city, as they should be. But when you get an outsider's perspective on London and England, you just see things from a different viewpoint. Like he's no fan of English food, and he has a whole long spiel about how there's this myth of the English breakfast, that the English breakfasts are the best in the world, and that their lunches and dinners, I'm using American English here, stink and are made of inedible foods, and breakfast is fabulous. And he says, no, that's not true. Breakfast is as awful as the rest of the meals in London. So he's funny. He is a funny guy, and he's observant. And something that the author does that I actually find to be tough for an author to pull off is he's a wise ass. He's definitely a wise guy. And, sometimes writers who write from that wise guy perspective are, it's like they're working too hard to be funny. It comes across as a little desperate or, not truly, not truly as funny as they want it to be. But Bleeck was a great writer of a wise guy narrator because he's so unflappable, right? And his observations are so spot on. And he's kind of a man of few words. So when he does say things, they tend to get right to the point, right down to the heart of the matter. And, he's not above tossing off a one-liner, but he's not really afraid of anybody. And not that he's some big bruiser type, but he's just really, he's really smart and he's experienced. This is one of the other things I really like about the character. There's something, for me, I love reading about people who are very competent at what they do and who have seen it all. And I think the great thing about experts in any field is that they've seen it all, right? So they've seen not only the triumphs, but they've seen many, many mistakes made. And I kind of feel that way as an editor. If any of you out there are writers and you're looking to hire an editor, my advice is always to hire a very experienced editor because they know what can go wrong and how to prevent that from happening. And that's not necessarily something that you get from a younger person. You pay more for an experienced editor, but in my opinion, it is worth it. So that's just a bit of an aside. St. Ives is this expert. And another thing that I like about this book is that in comparison to another book that I read maybe a month ago, it took place in this really kind of very closely circumscribed neighborhood of New York City. They're all over London in this. They're all over London, the various neighborhoods. There's a scene that takes place in Highgate Cemetery, which is on my bucket list. I really want to go there before I die. I mean, it's sort of overgrown, but it's so beautiful. Look up some pictures on the web or on Wikipedia or whatever. Karl Marx is buried there. It's really a cool London thing. And there's a scene that takes place there. And you don't get that feeling of claustrophobia that you can get when a book is set, in very, very close quarters. Thomas / Bleeck has us running all over London, the wealthy neighborhoods, the poor neighborhoods. Sounds like the wealthy neighborhoods then are still the wealthy neighborhoods now. But he keeps his characters moving around. There's lots of double crossing and a plot that it is just so easy to read. I mean, it's like writing this well and with this clarity requires, I think, probably many, many drafts to just hone the prose and tighten it and keep it from never being boring. I mean, some books nowadays, some writers, I won't mention any names, the writing's kind of lackadaisical. It's meant to sound, conversational, which is a good thing, but I like a book that has a sort of a writerly sense to it, where the writer is, showing you what he can do as a writer. But of course, they must also have the readerly sense that they are written to be read by a reader, that the writer wants the reader to have a good time. And certainly Ross Thomas, Oliver Bleeck does that very well. While he's having a good time, the reader is having a good time. And so it's just a very nice, it's a very, very pleasant company and very good entertainment. And I liked it and I recommend it. Unfortunately, the Bleeck books are kind of hard to come by. I did some scrounging around. Looks like what's out there. They're a little expensive. I happened to find this one at a bookstore in New Hampshire, where they had some really neat stuff. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to give this a try, even though it was a little pricey. I thought, you know, on your vacation, you'll spend more for things than you would when you're, you know, in your normal life. I just said, okay, I'm gonna splurge on this book, and I'm glad I did, because now I'll keep my eyes open for other books by Oliver Bleeck. In terms of criticism, because I always like to, you know, not just, you know, like a fanboy, just flap my gums, you know, and be all rah-rah without pointing to maybe some of the less good elements. The only thing I could say here, though, honestly, is that there's a part of the ending that is a little unresolved. And I've come to realize in recent years that readers just hate endings that are not resolved, where not every loose end is sewn up. And there's a part of that here where you just don't know. There's something that's left unsolved. I'm okay with that. I like an ambiguous ending. You know, when an author can pull that off, I just think that's a masterstroke. And Gillian Flynn did that in Gone Girl. And a lot of people hate the ending of that book. They think that she just kind of ran out of steam and didn't know what to do. But I think what she did was brilliant. But this isn't about Gone Girl, of which 47 trillion copies have been sold. This is about these videos are about forgotten mysteries, such as The HIGHBINDERS by Oliver Bleeck. So check him out if you can find him. I think you'll enjoy it, and I'll be back the next time I have another great forgotten mystery to share with you, which may be kind of soon because it's snowy around here and I'm not going out much, so I've got time to catch up on making these videos. Okay, thank you for listening and have a good night.